I sat there in the sterile quiet of room 314, watching the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor that somehow began to feel like my own heartbeat. The air around me was thick, filled with silence and the weight of impending loss. At 64 years old, I never imagined I would be sitting here alone with only the mechanical sounds of the hospital to keep me company while the world outside bustled with life. My husband Joseph was in his final days, and the truth weighed heavily on my chest. Down the hall, families gathered in warmth, celebrating life with laughter and comforting words. They clung to one another, the presence of their loved ones, a reminder of what we once had. But here in this small room, there was only the faint hum of the machines and the ache in my heart. I had called our children Jason and Emily countless times, but each time they promised to come and each time they didn't. The calls ended quickly, always an excuse, always a reason why they couldn't be here. It felt like a betrayal that I couldn't escape. Joseph, lying there so still, didn't deserve this. He'd spent his life giving, loving, and working hard for our family. And now, in his last moments, there was no one here to show him the love he so richly deserved. No one but me. And though my heart ached for him, I promised to stay. I promised I would be there even when no one else could. As the minutes ticked by, I realized I was waiting for a family that wasn't coming, and I felt more alone than I ever had before. The beeping of the heart monitor had become my heartbeat. Each beep seemed to echo louder in the stillness of the room, filling the space between me and everything outside. Down the hallway, I could hear laughter and the familiar murmur of family conversations, the sound of chairs scraping against the floor as more visitors arrived. They had their families, their moments, their voices, while my world was reduced to the rhythmic beep of the machine and the quiet, empty space around Joseph's bed. I glanced out the window, watching the movement of the world, but here it felt like everything had stopped. I couldn't help but compare the warmth of the other rooms to the coldness of mine. The steady stream of people entering rooms down the hall, bringing flowers, talking softly, and hugging one another, none of that reached us. Our room stayed quiet. I clutched Joseph's hand tighter, wishing for some sign, something to remind me that I wasn't alone. But the emptiness of the room only seemed to grow, and with it a hollow ache settled deeper in my chest. Dr. Williams stopped by again, his expression gentle but serious. He asked how I was holding up, and I smiled weakly, offering a faint reassurance. "They're on their way." I lied, as I had done every day since Joseph had been admitted. I could see the doubt in his eyes. He'd asked the same question 100 times, and each time I gave the same answer. They were coming. They always were. But they weren't. The truth was, I hadn't heard from Jason or Emily in days. They had promised to be here, but somehow those promises had slipped through the cracks of their busy lives. I didn't know if it was because they couldn't bear to face their father's death, or if it was just easier to avoid the pain altogether. Either way, the silence between us had grown. I sat beside Joseph, feeling the weight of it all. Each passing moment without a call, without a visit, made me feel more invisible, more alone. The beeping of the heart monitor, steady and unyielding, seemed to mock the quiet space around us. I thought about how I had spent years caring for my children, running to their side when they needed me, offering them every ounce of my love. Yet here I was watching Joseph slip away, with no one but myself to share it with. I felt a deep sorrow, not just for the loss of Joseph, but for the loss of what I thought was a family bound by love. It wasn't just the absence of my children that hurt. It was the realization that I had come to accept it. I kept telling myself that they would arrive soon, that they would make it right. But with each passing hour, I knew that was a lie. They were not coming. and the emptiness I felt in their absence was growing, taking over the room, the air, my very soul. The stillness of the room felt like a heavy blanket smothering everything beneath it. I tried to focus on Joseph to reassure him with my presence, but the weight of the situation was suffocating. The machines around us seemed like the only witnesses to our lives, keeping track of moments that I couldn't hold on to. Outside life continued, but in here it felt like everything had already ended. I remember when we used to laugh together when the world felt smaller, and our worries seemed distant. It was the early days of our marriage, just Joseph and me, a little apartment, and big dreams. We'd lie on the couch after a long day talking about the future, imagining the life we would build. Those dreams felt endless, and so did our love. There was something about the way Joseph would laugh, the sound that always seemed to warm the entire room, making everything feel possible. We were a team back then, side by side, figuring it all out together. The first house we bought, Joseph worked nights and weekends to fix it up, and I was right there beside him, painting walls and dreaming of a future. Raising Jason and Emily wasn't always easy, but we did it with love and commitment. We were both determined to give them a life full of opportunities. Joseph was never one to sit still. Whether it was helping with homework or building something in the yard, he was always there, always giving, and I was too. We made it work day by day, filled with those little moments that felt like the world was on our side. But as the years passed, I began to see things shift. Slowly at first, like a tide pulling away, and then more abruptly as the kids grew older. Jason went off to college and Emily got married. We were so proud of them, of course, but something changed along the way. The calls became less frequent. The visits slowed to a trickle. I used to call Jason every Sunday, but over time he became harder to reach. I told myself it was just a phase, that he was busy. And Emily, always so independent, seemed to have her own life to manage. But the phone calls, the simple visits that once kept us connected, started to feel like rare, precious things. I remember the Thanksgiving dinners we used to have, the laughter, the chaos of everyone gathered together. But last year, Jason called in the afternoon to say he couldn't make it. And Emily didn't even call. I tried to hold it together, telling myself that they were just busy, that they would come around. But deep down, I knew. I knew something was changing, something I couldn't quite fix. And the distance between us all was becoming more and more palpable. I could still see Joseph's face when we'd sit down for dinner, waiting for the kids to walk through the door. His expression was hopeful, as though he truly believed the next phone call would be the one where they said they were on their way. I wonder now if he knew all along what was happening. It hurt him, I could see that, but he never let it show. Instead, he just kept doing what he always did. He worked harder, he loved harder, and he kept our family together the best he could. Now, sitting in this hospital room, I look at those memories with a mixture of love and regret. The laughter, the dreams, the family we built together, it all feels like it happened in another lifetime. And here I am alone with Joseph, waiting for something that may never come, the return of the family we used to have. The world outside, with all its noise and life, seems so distant now, just like the children I once held so close. As I sit by Joseph's side, I can't help but wonder where we went wrong. Where did that family, the one full of love and dreams, go? The laughter we shared feels like it belongs to someone else, to another time. But in my heart, I still carry those memories, even if it seems like they're slipping away. I keep telling myself that they're just busy. Jason's always working on something, and Emily has her own family now. But deep down, I can't shake the feeling that it's more than that. I look at the empty chairs around Joseph's bed, at the silence that fills this room, And I wonder how we ended up here. How did it come to this? Why didn't they come? Outside our door, I hear the laughter of families, the quiet conversations, the sounds of people hugging and comforting each other. I can hear the faint scrape of chairs being moved as more and more visitors fill the halls. The energy in those rooms is palpable, full of life and love. But in here, it's just me and Joseph, and the steady beeping of the heart monitor that's slowly losing its rhythm. It's as though the world around me continues while I've been left behind forgotten in this sterile, lonely room. I try to call Jason again. The phone rings and rings, but no one answers. I've lost count of how many times I've called, how many times I've tried to reach out hoping that maybe this time, maybe today, they'll finally show up. But nothing. No call back. No message. No sign that they even care enough to check in. And every time I hang up, the weight in my chest grows heavier. I think back to all the times I put them first. The long nights I stayed up with them when they were sick, the countless hours spent helping them with homework, or listening to their problems. I gave them everything I had, but now they can't even be bothered to show up for their father in his final days. I don't understand it. Why does it feel like they've moved on without us, without me? I wish I could be angry with them. I wish I could yell and scream and demand an explanation. But I can't. All I feel is a quiet sadness, a deep, hollow ache that settles into my bones. How did we get to this point? I wonder if Joseph feels it too, though he's too weak to speak. Does he see it too? That our children are no longer there when we need them the most. The silence in this room presses down on me, suffocating me. I think about the holidays we used to spend together, the birthdays, the family gatherings. I remember how Joseph would light up when Jason or Emily would walk through the door. But now all I have is this empty room, this empty house, and a heart that aches with the absence of the people who should have been here. The people I thought would always be there. The beeping of the monitor is almost deafening now. It feels like a constant reminder of what's slipping away. Joseph's chest rises and falls with a steady rhythm, but it doesn't bring me comfort anymore. It just reminds me of how much we've lost, how much I've lost. The love we shared, the family we built, it all seems so far away now, like a distant dream that's fading with each passing second. And still, I hold on. I hold on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll come. But I know the truth now. They're not coming. And I'm not sure if that hurts more than the loss of Joseph, or if it's all just part of this slow unraveling that started long before we ended up here. Either way, I don't know how to make sense of it. All I know is that this room, this silence, is becoming my reality. And with it, I'm realizing just how alone I've become. When I first saw the envelope, my heart stopped. It was in the small pile of things Dr. Williams had brought to me: papers, a few personal belongings Joseph had kept close. The envelope was heavy, and there was something small inside that jingled as I picked it up. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable, Joseph's careful, familiar script. I hadn't expected this. I hadn't expected anything. But there it was, a letter from him, written when he was still conscious before the end. I sat down slowly, my hands trembling as I opened it. The key inside clinked against the paper as it fell into my palm. It was an old-fashioned brass key worn smooth from years of use. The letter itself was brief, but full of love, each word heavy with emotion. Joseph apologized for not being able to say these things in person, for not being able to fix what had broken over the years. He spoke of our life together, the good times, and how much he had always treasured our family. But most of all, he expressed his regret. He wrote that he was sorry for the way things had turned out with our children, for how they had distanced themselves from us. His words cut deep, but they also carried a weight of understanding. Joseph had known all along. He had shielded me from the truth, from the full extent of our children's indifference. He hadn't wanted me to carry that burden. Instead, he had quietly supported them in ways I never knew. The key in my hand was meant to open a safe hidden away in our home. Inside that safe were things I never could have imagined, things I wish I had known earlier. Joseph had been sending money to Jason and Emily without telling me, covering their expenses, helping them in ways I had no idea about. And it was all done in silence, without recognition, without any thanks. I read through the letter several times, my eyes welling up with tears as I tried to understand the depth of Joseph's love for our children. He had kept it all from me, his sacrifices, his pain, so that I could believe in something that was no longer real. I never knew he had done so much, had given so much all without ever asking for anything in return. His love was bigger than I could ever have understood. I had thought he was disappointed in our children, but he had only wanted to protect me from that disappointment. The key felt cold in my hand, heavy with the weight of all the secrets Joseph had carried alone. I couldn't bring myself to go to the safe right away. The thought of what I might find there, the realization that Joseph had been bearing this burden alone, left me feeling hollow. He had given away his hard-earned money, his savings, his life insurance, everything he could spare just to ensure our children had what they needed. Even in his final days, even as he fought for his life in this hospital bed, he had been thinking of them, of how to protect them, of how to shield me from the truth. I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions: love, gratitude, anger, and sorrow. How had I missed it all? How had I not seen the quiet sacrifices he made? The quiet way he shielded us both from the reality of our children's neglect. Joseph had been a rock for us, but he had also been a quiet martyr, giving everything and receiving nothing in return. I never knew he loved me so much, or that he loved them even more. I closed the letter and held it against my chest, feeling the weight of it, the weight of everything Joseph had done. My heart ached, but it was no longer just with sadness. It was with awe, with a deep understanding of just how much Joseph had given, how much he had loved us all, even in the face of everything falling apart. I knew now that his love was bigger than any of us could ever repay, and I understood, maybe too late, the depth of his sacrifice. And still, I held on to the key as though it could unlock something more than just a safe. It could unlock the truth. I had missed the truth of Joseph's quiet, unwavering love. A love that, for all its strength, had ultimately been the thing that carried me through this unbearable time, even when I couldn't see it. The funeral had come and gone, a blur of somber faces and hushed voices. But what happened afterward was where the real truth began to unfold. As we sat in the living room, I could feel the weight of the moment, the tension hanging in the air between me and my children. Jason and Emily had returned their polished clothes, still smelling faintly of the church, but there was no sorrow in their eyes, only business. It didn't take long for the conversation to shift, as it always did. They started discussing Joseph's house, the one we had spent years building together, as though it were just another asset to divide. I watched them, my heart sinking with every word. "Mom, we've been thinking about it," Jason said, his voice calm, calculating. "The house is too much for you now. You need to think about downsizing. We should sell it and we'll figure out the estate." Emily nodded along, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her eyes avoiding mine. It was as though they were already planning their next steps without considering me, without considering what this house meant to us. what it meant to Joseph. I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, hot and sudden. The betrayal of their indifference was like a slap in the face, and I could no longer hold back the flood of emotion that had been building for years. "Sell it," I said, my voice trembling with both disbelief and pain. "Sell the house your father built with his own 2 hands. Do you really think that's all he was worth? You think that's all we were to him?" Jason shifted uncomfortably, but Emily stayed silent, her eyes downcast. I didn't care. I wasn't going to let them hide from this any longer. "Do you have any idea what your father did for you, for both of you?" I stood up, my hand shaking as I reached for the journal I had found among Joseph's things. I opened it, flipping to the pages where Joseph had written about the years of sacrifice, about the silent ways he had carried the burden of their neglect. I began to read aloud each word, cutting through the air like a blade. January 5th, 2014. I began, my voice growing steadier with each passing line. Jason called again to ask for money. He said it was for bills, but I saw on his Facebook that he bought a new car. I don't know how to tell Everly the truth, but I sent him the money anyway. I paused, looking at Jason, whose face had gone pale. "How long do you think I've been covering for you, Jason? How long do you think your father kept all of this from me so I wouldn't have to bear the weight of your selfishness?" I flipped to another page, my eyes catching a recent entry. April 2nd, 2020. Emily didn't come for Easter. She said she was busy with the kids, but I saw on Facebook that she was at a beach resort in Florida. I didn't say anything to Everly, but I sent her a card anyway. My voice faltered, but I forced myself to continue. "And then there's this one, Emily's kids are in private school now. I sent her money again. She never asks, but I know she needs it. I just wish she would call." I looked up at them, then my heart breaking in my chest. "Do you understand now? Your father gave everything for you. Every dollar he saved, every sacrifice he made, he did it all quietly, without ever asking for anything in return. And now, here you are talking about selling his house, dividing up what's left, like it's just another piece of property." Jason looked down, his face flushed with shame, but Emily still wouldn't meet my eyes. I saw the guilt in her, but it was too little too late. "He never told me, Mom," Jason finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know. I thought he was just angry or disappointed. I didn't realize he was doing all that for us." "Of course you didn't know." I snapped, the tears finally spilling over. "Because he never let you see the truth. He shielded you, and he shielded me from what you were doing. He loved you so much, and you didn't even care. He worked himself to the bone, took out loans against his life insurance just to make sure you were okay while we sat here pretending everything was fine. And now you want to sell the house he worked so hard to keep. You want to divide up everything he gave, like it's just some inheritance you're entitled to." Emily finally spoke, her voice soft but strained. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know. I didn't realize he was doing all that. I thought it was just what parents did. You know, I didn't see it as something he was carrying all alone." "You never saw it," I said, my voice breaking. "And that's the problem. You never saw him, not really. You never saw the man who worked so hard, who loved you both even when you didn't deserve it. He gave everything for you. And what did you give him in return? Nothing. You were too busy. You were too wrapped up in your own lives to even notice." I paused, letting my words sink in, watching as the weight of the truth hit them. Jason's face was pale, his hands fidgeting in his lap, while Emily sat frozen, her eyes red with unshed tears. "I don't want your apologies now," I said, my voice steadying. "I want you to understand the truth. Your father didn't deserve the way you treated him. And I don't deserve to be treated like this either. You can't undo what's been done, but maybe you can finally start to see him for who he really was." The room fell silent, and I could feel the tension thick in the air. I didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in years, I felt like I had said everything I needed to say. I had finally confronted them, finally told them the truth about Joseph's love, about his sacrifices, and about the cost of their neglect. It was out there now, and I couldn't take it back. But maybe, just maybe, they would understand. If not now, then someday. The decision had been made, and there was no going back. I sat in the same chair by Joseph's side, the house quiet around me. But in my mind, I was already moving forward. The confrontation with Jason and Emily had been painful, but it was necessary. They might never understand the sacrifices Joseph made, but that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I didn't need their approval, their validation, or their understanding. I had lived my life for them, for our family, for so long. But now I was going to start living for myself. I had spent years putting everyone else first, always waiting for the right time to do the things I dreamed of doing with Joseph. Ireland was one of those dreams, the trip we had always talked about, but never took. Joseph had always promised we would go someday, and I believed him. Now it was just me, and I wasn't going to wait any longer. As I sat there, the weight of the past few weeks still heavy in my heart, I realized something. Joseph's love had been enough. It had always been enough. He had loved me completely, unconditionally, and that love had carried me through everything, the highs, the lows, the joys, and the heartaches. I had been surrounded by his love for so many years, but now I had to learn to be strong on my own, to stand on my own 2 feet. His love would always be with me, but it was time for me to start living on my own terms. I could feel the change within me as I made plans for the future. The house, the memories, all of it was mine now. I didn't need to sell it to move on. I could keep it, and I could make it my own again the way Joseph and I had intended. The thought of going to Ireland, seeing the places Joseph had dreamed of, filled me with a new sense of purpose. It was like I was stepping into a new chapter of my life, a chapter where I could honor Joseph's memory without being stuck in the past. I could still hear his voice in my mind, his soft laughter, his quiet support, and the way he always made me feel safe. But I knew now that I was strong enough to move forward, that I didn't need to keep holding on to the past in the same way. I would carry it with me, but I wouldn't let it define me. Joseph had given me everything, and now I was going to live in a way that honored all of that. The journey ahead would be mine to take, and I was no longer afraid. I was no longer bound by the expectations of others. I was free to live for myself, to find my own happiness, and to finally fulfill the dreams I had put on hold for so long. The road ahead wasn't clear, but it was mine to walk one step at a time. And for the first time in years, I felt ready to take that step.